They call it integrity, dressed in deceit. But justice don't live in that kind of cheat. It's not red versus blue, it's right versus wrong. And silence won't last where we raise our song.
So, welcome to this exploration, John. John R. Brakey. Today is Monday, July 20th, 2026.
Just one day before the Arizona primary.
Exactly. The primary is tomorrow. And you, John, along with Ken Bennett, have just released this really crucial open letter and press release through Audiate USA.
Which is incredibly timely. I mean, dropping it right now.
Yeah, the timing is huge. So our mission today, it's not a standard podcast episode. We are actively exploring your newly released source material, John.
We really want to unpack the core arguments of the release.
Right. To objectively break down the exact mechanisms of election transparency that you guys are advocating for.
And just to jump in here and set the stage for our listeners, I want to be super clear. We are exploring the exact claims and ideas presented in this Audiate USA document completely objectively.
Right. No taking sides here.
Exactly. No political sides whatsoever. Our focus is purely on the systemic design of, post-election audits as they are outlined in the text.
Just the mechanics of it.
Just the mechanics. Because the hook here really is this brilliant paradox at the center of the release. I mean, in an era where technology is drastically outpacing policy, the key to saving public trust might not be like some complex new software.
Right.
It might simply be changing the sequence in which we count and audit.
That sequence part is so crucial. But before we get into the technical weeds of the audits, we have to look at why this letter was even written in the first place.
The cultural context.
Yeah, the cultural erosion of trust in the voting process.
Yeah.
You open by addressing these deeply cynical phrases that, honestly, we hear everywhere now. Things like, my vote doesn't matter, or they're all just corrupt.
Or it's a rigged game. You hear that one constantly.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is how the text analyzes this. It points out a really core realization: trust alone is just no longer enough to stabilize election outcomes.
Yeah, we're kind of past the point of just trust us.
Way past it. The document mentions the cast vote record, or the CVR, as a key piece of this puzzle. Because technology is moving faster than policy, courts actually require hard evidence now.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because for anyone unfamiliar, a CVR is basically it's the digital receipt showing exactly how the machine read an individual ballot.
Precisely. It is the granular data point of the vote itself.
And when access to that kind of really granular data is restricted, paranoia just totally fills the void, which goes back to the casino thing.
Oh, the hands under the table.
Right. If the dealer shuffles the deck under the table where you can't see it, it doesn't matter if they are dealing fairly. You're going to think it's rigged. Transparency literally means keeping hands above the table.
And the release highlights what happens when they drop below the table. They reference this investigative report about Santa Cruz County.
Oh, right. They sued us for asking, right?
Yes. Inside Santa Cruz County's culture of concealment, retaliation, and the missing millions.
Wow, quite a title.
It is, but it emphasizes just how deep this fight for visibility goes. When processes go opaque, cynicism just flourishes.
Which brings up the massive mechanical flaw your open letter identifies in Arizona's current system. I mean, the numbers here are wild.
Yeah, they really focus on Maricopa and Pima counties.
Right. And those two counties account for about 78% of the state's total vote. And over 90% of those are cast early or by mail, and they're tabulated in these huge batches.
Right, massive central counting facilities.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The text points out this glaring double standard.
And it's a huge blind spot.
It is. For precinct-based hand counts, so people voting in person, the results must be publicly reported before the audit precincts are randomly selected.
Right, before the audit.
But for early ballots, the audit batches might be selected before the complete results are publicly committed.
Which is just wild when you think about it.
It really is. Why does this blind spot even exist? If we figured out the gold standard for in-person voting, how did we miss this for the 90% of ballots cast early?
Well, the text really zeroes in on this, and former Arizona Secretary of State Ken Bennett is actually quoted directly in the release explaining the mechanics of it.
Oh, right. What did he say?
He says, quote, "An audit is strongest when the results of ballot batches have been committed before anyone knows which ballot batches will be examined."
Which makes total sense. I mean, it's like an inspector coming to check a restaurant's kitchen.
Right, exactly.
If the owner knows exactly which day the inspector is coming, because they saw the schedule before the kitchen closed, they're going to make sure it's spotless that morning.
Yeah, the independent verification loses its power completely if you know the test beforehand. So, with this flaw clearly identified in the early ballot process, the letter moves to this really actionable solution.
Right before tomorrow's primary.
Yeah.
And it's a proposed 3-step standard, right?
Yes. Commit first, audit second, verify third.
Commit, audit, verify. And they anchor it with that Audit USA motto: voting is secret. Counting must be public.
Which is such a powerful way to frame it.
It is. So what does this all mean for the actual process?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, there is a super critical nuance in the text that we have to emphasize.
Right, because they're very careful about their wording.
Very careful. The letter explicitly states this is not an allegation of fraud.
Right. Not at all.
Not at all. Rather, it is a structural call to improve audit design for, much stronger independent verification.
Yeah, they just want the rules to align.
Exactly. And you look at the Audit USA board figures like Arlene Leaf, Bill Risner, Benny J. Smith.
And Lynn Bernstein and Susan Pynchon are on there too.
Yes, all of them. It represents a completely unified front, asking for a simple alignment of the rules. What applies to the precinct has to apply to the batch.
Yeah, that can...
Usually, when you install a state-of-the-art security system in a bank, the order of operations is pretty obvious, right? Like you build the vault, put the money inside, lock the door.
Yeah, lock the heavy steel door first.
Exactly. And only then do you trust that the assets are actually secure.
Right, because leaving the vault door wide open while, announcing which security cameras are temporarily turned off for maintenance,
Yeah.
that would just entirely defeat the purpose.
It really would.
Good security doesn't rely on perfect human behavior. It relies on removing the opportunity for a breach in the first place.
Well, and that brings us to our focus today. Because when we look at the invisible architecture, securing something I'd argue is far more valuable than cash our elections, we might be leaving a massive blind spot right out in the open.
We might be.
So today, we are diving into a fascinating exploration into the source material. Specifically, an open letter dated July 19th, 2026, directed to Arizona election officials from John R. Brakey and Ken Bennett of Audit USA. And for you listening, our resident learner who loves to geeks out on this stuff but hates information overload, we're basically looking at the literal blueprints of democracy today.
But before we dive into the mechanics of those blueprints, we really need to establish some ground rules for this exploration.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, this source material touches on highly politically charged data regarding public trust in recent U.S. presidential elections. So we need to be crystal clear. We're taking absolutely no political sides here.
None at all.
We're not endorsing any specific viewpoints or, making claims about past elections. Our focus is strictly on impartially unpacking the architectural and mathematical ideas proposed in this text.
Right. Just the math and the mechanics. And the core proposal of this document revolves around one structurally profound mantra, which is commit first, audit second, verify third.
Yeah, and to understand why commit first is being proposed as this revolutionary fix, we first have to look at why the current sequence of auditing is, essentially backwards for the vast majority of voters.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why is it backwards?
So the document points out this really fascinating discrepancy in Arizona state law. It's essentially a tale of two statutes. The first rule, ARS section 16602B, covers precinct voting, so people voting in person on election day.
Right.
For these ballots, the law requires that the unofficial precinct vote totals must be made public. They must be committed before a random sample of precincts is chosen for an audit.
Okay, so you lock in the results, then pull the random sample to check the math. That makes complete sense.
It does. But the catch is that precinct voting only accounts for about 10% of the total ballots cast in Arizona's largest counties.
Wait, only 10%?
Yeah, just 10. The other 90% early ballots and vote by mail, they fall under a totally different statute, ARS section 16602F. And under that second rule, the electronically tabulated batches designated for the hand count audit are pre-selected before the final election results are committed.
See, this is where the process starts to look like, pulling names from a magic hat, but letting someone peek at the slips of paper before the draw.
That's a great way to put it.
The source text actually uses a great visualization for this. Imagine 9,580 total batches of early ballots. Officials pre-select just 52 of those batches to be audited.
Right.
If that happens before the results are locked in, A bad actor, whether that's a foreign hacker or a corrupt insider, they don't need to hack the whole system. They only have to manipulate the 9,500 batches they know for a fact won't be checked. I mean, is an audit even mathematically random if the sample is known before the results are finalized?
Well, no, it loses its independence entirely. It's basically an open book test at that point. But the authors of the letter are very careful to clarify. They aren't alleging actual fraud has happened because of this.
Right.
They are just pointing out a fundamental flaw in security design. Good audit design seeks to make manipulation strategies impossible, not merely unlikely. Pre-selecting the sample just leaves the rest of the system vulnerable.
But I have to stop you there. Because we test these voting machines extensively before Election Day, right? Like, election officials run test ballots through the scanners all the time. Doesn't that pre-testing already prove the system is secure?
It proves the system works under controlled testing conditions. But the source material points out that passing a test is not the same thing as a post-election audit.
Okay.
They actually compare it to one of the most infamous corporate scandals of the 21st century, the Volkswagen clean diesel emissions scandal.
Oh, wow. Between 2006 and 2015. Yeah. VW sold hundreds of thousands of cars that passed EPA emissions tests with flying colors. But wait, how does a car cheating on an emissions test relate to a voting scanner?
Because VW had secretly installed software that could literally detect when the car was in a controlled testing environment.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Right. The car actually knew it was being tested. It would turn on the pollution controls to pass the test, get the gold star, and then turn them off on the open road.
And it ended up emitting up to 40 times the legal limit of nitrogen oxides.
Exactly. So apply that logic to voting machines. They undergo logic and accuracy testing, LNA testing, where predetermined test ballots are run through the machine.
Right.
But a voting machine is just a computer. It's a black box. It could theoretically be programmed to behave perfectly during a controlled pretest, but behave maliciously on Election Day when the real ballots are fed in.
Which means relying just on pretests is incredibly risky.
What's fascinating here is the research of Dr. Philip B. Stark. He's a UC Berkeley professor and a real pioneer in election auditing.
Okay, I know that name.
Yeah, he researched this extensively, particularly when he analyzed the 2020 presidential audit in Georgia. And his conclusion was that audits absolutely cannot compensate for weak underlying records.
Makes sense.
Relying purely on pretesting or running an audit with a weak chain of custody isn't security. He literally calls it election theater.
Election theater. Wow. It looks official and costs money, but provides no real mathematical assurance. I mean, passing a controlled test is just quality assurance, not an audit of actual real-world performance.
Right. You need independent verification of the actual cast ballots.
So if we can't blindly trust the pre-election tests and the current early voting audit leaves a 90% blind spot, how do we actually verify the vote? Millions of mail-in ballots getting mixed into massive batches at centralized counting centers sounds like total chaos to track.
It does. And solving that modern chaos requires looking backward, specifically to Arizona in 1912.
Wait, 1912?
Yeah, back then the process was radically transparent. Ballots were read aloud in the precinct. The totals were tallied on a sheet in front of observers. And then each physical paper ballot was punched with a hole and slid onto a piece of string.
A literal physical chain of custody. Anyone could just walk up, count the ballots on the string, and verify that it matched the tally sheet.
Exactly. The count was completely public and verifiable by the citizens themselves.
But we obviously can't have citizens physically stringing up millions of pieces of paper today. How do we replicate a piece of string in a world of digital scanners and mixed batches?
Well, the modern equivalent of that string already exists inside the voting machines.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the document introduces a process called ABE, which stands for Auditable Ballot Examination. It utilizes two digital records that modern scanners already produce automatically for every single ballot.
Okay, what are they?
First, the ballot image, which is a digital photograph of the paper ballot. And second, the cast vote record, or CVR, which is the spreadsheet data of how the machine interpreted that image.
Got it. So ABE basically takes the picture of the ballot and links it to the data row, showing exactly how it was counted.
Exactly. It's an Excel-based, non-proprietary recipe for transparency. By using hyperlinks to connect the ballot images directly to the CDR data, anyone can reconstruct the election precinct by precinct.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can visually cross-check the machine's work. It is literally the 1912 string ballot, just digitized.
So what does this all mean? Because Playing devil's advocate here, digitizing everyone's ballot and letting any citizen look at it immediately raises a massive red flag for privacy. How is that still a secret ballot?
And that is the most crucial distinction in this entire proposal. The core guiding principle of VUDA USA is this: voting must remain secret. Counting must be public.
Secret voting, public counting.
Right. Because these digital records strip away the voter's identity, you can't tell who cast the ballot. You can only see that a ballot was cast and exactly how the machine counted it.
Okay, I see.
It preserves total voter anonymity while demanding radical transparency from the counting process.
Which brings us to why this specific, bureaucratic adjustment is being framed as a matter of national survival right now. The document cites a YouGov poll from June 2024, and the numbers are just staggering.
Yeah, they really are.
38% of Democrats and 72% of Republicans say they distrust the results of at least one of the last two presidential elections. And then the text brings in Abraham Lincoln's 1838 Lyceum address.
Right, delivered 23 years before the Civil War.
Exactly. And he warned that the greatest danger to the American Republic would never come from a foreign enemy. It would come from within. He said that as a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide.
This raises an important question, though. Die by suicide because we lose faith in our own institutions, right?
Right.
If citizens don't trust the scoreboard, they just stop playing the game together. When people believe the system is rigged, a constitutional republic cannot survive on blind faith alone.
It really can't.
And it's not about proving one political party right or the other wrong. It's about fixing the broken scoreboard so that trust isn't a requirement. It's a byproduct of transparent, verifiable evidence.
Which brings us right back to the core mantra: commit first, audit second, verify third. It sounds like dry policy at first, but for you listening right now, this is the literal mechanical process that validates your consent to be governed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Committing the results first locks the bank vault. Auditing second ensures the sample is truly random and impossible to game. And verifying third with open source tools like ABE gives every citizen the power to check the math themselves.
It just takes election security out of the realm of theater and back into the realm of measurable mathematical reality. It essentially replaces trust us with, here's the evidence, look for yourself.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating, provocative thought to mull over. If election officials can utilize existing digital tools like ballot images and cast vote records to create a perfectly transparent, verifiable, modern string for voting, how might this exact same open source, citizen-led verification method be applied to other opaque areas of our government? If we have the technology to transparently trace a single anonymous ballot through a massive digital system, shouldn't we be able to apply that exact same logic to track the exact flow of local tax dollars?
Oh, that's interesting.
Or lobbying money. If we can verify a ballot, shouldn't we be able to verify a budget?
Well, it's the exact same architectural challenge. Once you establish that the vault must be locked before you verify what's inside, you can secure almost anything.
We just have to make sure we're shutting the door first. Thanks for jumping into this exploration with us. We'll see you next time.
And every name they drop is a stolen palace. But we remember who bled for this line, and we won't back down, not this time. It's the vote they fear, the voice, the spark will bring the light. They can keep the dark. Not with rage, but with resolve. This is how a nation evolves. The new Civil War isn't with bullets, it's with ballots.